Funding for This Is Nashville comes from you, our listeners, and Music City Prep Clinic, Nashville-based provider for PrEP and offering comprehensive sexual health services in an environment designed to be safe, professional, and shame-free. Learn more at musiccityprep.org.
I'm Khalil Ekulona, and this is Nashville. My parents are music lovers, true music lovers. They're different people, so naturally they have different tastes. My dad loves jazz, psychedelic rock, and funk. My mom, she likes the hits, Motown, soul, Americana, and bluegrass. I remember 1990. I was entering my senior year of high school and was hooked on what was then the golden age of hip-hop. I would sometimes commandeer the multi-CD changer in the living room with all of my favorite groups. One day I went to change out a few CDs and saw a disc titled Flight of the Cosmic Hippo from Béla, Fleck, and the Flecktones. My mom was watching and quietly said to me, "My beloved son, if that disc goes missing from this CD player, there will be consequences." That was my first introduction to Béla Fleck, an unforgettable one at that. So it's an honor to sit down with the person who is partly responsible for me gaining the understanding that my mom does not mess around with her music. I'm happy to welcome master musician Béla Fleck to This Is Nashville. Béla, thanks for being here.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Nice to be here. If you knew me, you'd be able to forget me.
Unforgettable. So how are you today? How's it going?
It's going good. It's going good. My wife, Abigail, a wonderful singer and banjo player, she's out of town. I'm watching the boys.
Okay.
I've got a 6-year-old and 11-year-old, so I'm shifted from being on tour with the Beat Trio and suddenly into being Mr. Mom, which is lovely.
Which is more tiring, being on tour or being Mr. Mom?
It's less tiring to run around in circles doing music than it is to sit still and be with the boys. But it's real. They're both really important, and I suspect that the being with the boys is the more important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. You've been making music for over 50 years professionally.
Yeah, I need a break. No, I don't want a break. I want to do more. I want to do as much as I can before the clock ticks out.
How does it feel when you reflect back on what your career has been so far?
It's pretty unbelievable because I've set a variety of goals and exceeded them over and over again and had to make new ones. And some pretty impossible seeming ones have become, part of my story. Like, for instance, when I started playing banjo, I got inspired by seeing Chick Corea play at the Beacon Theater in New York City when I was 17, and we became very good friends, and I got to record with him and learn a lot from him as a mentor, and now he's gone, and so it feels like, wow, what an incredible thing to have happened. But I had that same feeling about a lot of people in the bluegrass world who, when I was coming up, they were my heroes: Sam Bush, David Grisman, Tony Rice, Jerry Douglas, all these people that know that world would know those folks, and the fact that they became my peers is equally astonishing to me. But I just try to live up. I try to keep on doing stuff that is a push that forces me to grow and live up to the honor of some of the people I've gotten to play with.
These master musicians who you admired and now you're peers with, and there's the adage of saying don't meet your heroes, but you have had the ability to become peers with your heroes, and I'm sure friends with them. What does that mean to you to see these masters embrace you, accept you, and help guide you to become on their level?
Well, when you meet some of these people, they're not people to you yet. They're this picture of a person that you have in your mind, this iconic, amazing creature. And then at a certain point, they become human beings, and that puts their music in a different perspective as well. Because you just see how it flows out of Chick Corea or Zakir Hussain, who we just lost recently, another incredible mentor to me. You just see who they are as people and how they turn out to be the kind of people you wish they were most of the time. Chick, if anything, he was always to a fault making sure the musicians he worked with were happy with what was going on, and he treated with them incredible respect. So yeah, I mean, all of that is inspiring.
Is that rare to have someone like Chick Corea make sure, like you said, to a fault, to ensure that everyone involved is happy?
When I say to a fault, for instance, he wasn't that concerned with billing me for my share of our expenses for years. I was like, let us pay you. Oh, well, we'll work it out. We'll work it out. That wasn't what he was thinking about. I mean, it got worked out. He was much more concerned with, what's the next set of notes I'm going to play? Is this a situation I want to be in? Is this fun? Am I getting challenged in a way that's fun for myself? Am I challenging the people with me? Am I helping everybody be better? I think that was all part of his calculus. And I try to think that way too.
It's interesting because that to me that feels like thinking more about the artistry and the craft more so than the music business and the bottom line.
Yeah, I mean, like, unfortunately, we have to think about both.
Yeah.
So if you're going to be successful, I mean, even if you think about famous classical musicians, they not only did incredible new music for their time, but they found a way to be remembered. Yeah. You know, they had to market themselves to some extent, or maybe history did it for them in some cases. But in this crazy modern world, you know, it's like you've got to figure out how that all works while trying to keep, you know, towing the line on the musicality and the idealism of what you're trying to do. And those are two different mind spaces. Like when you're trying to think, well, what did we get paid here last time? Are we being treated fairly? Is the band going to get the cut that they deserve? How are we going to do that? It's a very different point of view than how are we going to be partners in this music, and how am I responding to you, and how are you responding to me in real time in this improvised instrumental music that I'm involved in.
Now, you grew up in New York City, and you fell in love with the banjo.
I know.
That's not something people put together. New York City, falling in love with the banjo. They think
I've
more of the South or Appalachia.
Yeah, I've heard that.
How were you introduced to the instrument?
Well, it was the Beverly Hillbillies. It was Earl Scruggs.
Okay.
And Earl Scruggs had this way of activating the unactivated banjo player. And so, in other words, what I'm saying is that almost every banjo player I've ever met who played three-finger style professionally can tell you the story of when they first heard Earl Scruggs and how they had to stop whatever they were doing until it was over and then immediately go find a banjo. And it was true it's really not an exaggeration. There's a lot of stories of cars pulled over to the side of the road and people being in shock and then having to find out what they just heard. And the also interesting thing to me is that it doesn't do that to everybody, which is surprising to me because it does it to me.
Yeah.
So, for instance, that very first time I heard it, my big brother, Louis, who's a year older than me, another New York City kid, he heard the same thing I heard, had no impact on him.
Okay.
And then at the end of the show, I said, "It's coming back, whatever that was. Did you hear that? Wasn't that great?" I don't know. And it comes back, and there's a little, play out to the end of the credits. And I said, "Did you hear that? There it is again." I was 4 or 5. He was 5 or 6. He was like, "Yeah, I don't know. It's okay, I guess." But for me, it was like my world had changed.
Exposed to something entirely new.
Yeah, but you hear about people with other instruments. You hear about that when someone hears someone heard Charlie Parker for the first time. They're a saxophone player, or when they heard Chick, if they're a piano player, or Herbie Hancock, or something, or B.B. King, if you're going to be a blues guitar player. People have certain musicians can be an on switch to other musicians, and there's some indefinable humanity in their music that affects the listener.
Now, was the banjo your first instrument?
I was playing guitar after I heard the banjo. So here's the funny thing about it for me is at first I didn't know what was making that sound because I'm growing up in New York City and I'm watching this television show and there was no banjo to be seen, and yet I'm hearing this sound. And I wasn't attracted to the country part of it either. I was just interested in that primitive high-tech sound that was going on there, that banjo thing. So then I went and played guitar because I didn't really think I could ever play the banjo when I found out what it was. It seemed impossible that anyone could actually play it. So I didn't have the presumptuosity. That's a new word I think I just created.
We're going to go with it.
Yeah, let's go with it. I didn't believe I could play it, so I never got one. So I started playing guitar in a sort of a half-assed manner, as a teenage kid might do. But I never got that serious about it. I practiced a little bit, learned some Beatles songs, learned some blues scales. Then when I was 15, right before I started high school, I went to see my grandfather in Peekskill, New York, upstate, and he had bought a banjo. He said, "Oh, you like guitar? I found this at a garage sale." And he put it into my hands, and I was like, "Oh my God, there it is." And so on the way home from there, which was a train down the Hudson, there was a banjo player who saw me with this case and said, "Hey, is that a banjo? Is that a 5-string?" I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Do you know how to play it?" I said, "No." He said, "You want me to tune it up for you?" "Yes." And so he tuned it up for me and showed me a couple of things on the train home, and then I was hooked.
That's a miraculous happy accident right there.
It is. And the other interesting thing to me now as a parent is, as a guitarist, I was, as I said, half-assed, interested in the guitar. As a banjo player, I was a psycho practicing type A freak.
Okay.
It was a completely different experience once I had the banjo, and it was I couldn't put it down. I got cold sweats when I didn't have it for long. I went to school without it. I would go hang out with people after school, and I'd just go, I got to leave. I got to go. I got to get to my banjo. It was highly psychotic. And then by the time I was out of high school, I was at a professional level, and I could join a band. I got lucky. My little brother was born, a surprise to my parents, and so everybody was sleep deprived.
Yeah.
And so I managed to not apply to any colleges, and to understand how weird that is. My mother and my father were teachers in the school system in New York City. So the idea that I got through high school, senior high school, without applying to colleges is completely based on the fact that my little brother was born, and everybody was just. It was just a funny time. So I get out of high school, and they're like, what about college? I've said, well, it's too late. It's too late. So
well done.
And so I was able to get into a band that year, and that led me eventually to move here to Nashville to join Newgrass Revival in 1981 with Sam Bush and John Cowan and Pat Flynn.
So as you're young, you get this banjo. On the ride home, it's tuned. You learn a few things. You said that on guitar, you learned some blues, you learned some Beatles. Did you practice that on the banjo?
Well, eventually I discovered at high school that I got a lot more mileage if I played like the introduction to Stairway to Heaven on the banjo than if I played Deliverance.
Yeah.
Or people would go, or if I played a Grateful Dead riff or a Led Zeppelin riff. People go, oh, well, that's cool. And also going to high school of music and art in New York City, which was like the Fame School, there were people in my high school, like if you're in the jazz world, someone like Marcus Miller was a bass player at school in our gospel group and high school jazz group. Kenny Washington was a drummer. Omar Hakim was a drummer there. Don Byron was playing the clarinet. It was like the top level jazz players were in my school, and then they were, some of them were kind to me. But I was very interested in what they were up to. That was very interesting to me. I tried to get in the jazz band, but I just wasn't capable enough on guitar, and banjo wasn't an option.
Was that kind of that experience the birth of developing these ideas?
Well, it was kind of baked in, like growing up in New York City and listening to all kinds of music, and it was like, well, why not? Why not play that? And then when I heard Chick Corea's music, it was actually in a high school appreciation class, and it was a similar experience to hearing Earl Scruggs for the first time. It was like, whoa, I didn't know jazz went that way. And if jazz is like that, I want to learn how to do it on the banjo, because he played so rhythmically forward and almost Latin. And that was more like banjo, where when I listened to Stan Getz or some of the great, we'd call them straight ahead jazz players, it was harder to imagine how the banjo could do that. Although I loved the music, I couldn't really see it. But when I saw that jazz could be played with a forward rhythm, as fusion was happening in high school, John McLaughlin, Weather Report was out, and soon after Shakti, with John McLaughlin and Zakir, people like that, very forward rhythm, but with a lot of jazz influence. And then I thought, well, I think that could work on this instrument. And then I went to work to try to figure out how to do it.
What was that process like?
It's a long, long process. I mean, like I was a closet jazz player, like a bad jazz player that would like go to jam sessions and try to find a way to, and people would laugh at me. And but I just kept working at it. But I made a living in bluegrass bands, but I had that. But it wasn't just jazz. I mean, I was also trying to learn Bach partitas on the banjo. I was listening to Irish music. I was listening to all kinds of classical music. It was all interesting. And just within jazz itself, there's so many different languages. So if you try to learn to play like Charlie Parker, who was another person who turned on my fire, that was a different language than what Chick was playing.
You played with Chick. You released 2 albums with the legend who passed away in 2021. What did you love most about playing with him?
Well, he was a lot of fun to play with. I mean, so I've also gotten to play a lot with another jazz pianist named Marcus Roberts. And Marcus Roberts has more of a sense of the right way to do things.
Okay.
Like in other words, he'd say, listen, like when you solo, I'm going to get out of your way and leave a bunch of space in the middle, and I'm going to play sparse chords so you can lead, So that was, that's the mature thing to do. Now, Chick Corea, the busier I would play, the busier he would play. It was more like, oh, if you're going to start stirring it up, I'm going to stir it up too. So it was, you had to be very strong because he was going to jump all over you. He wasn't going to get out of the way and make room for you. If you started playing something that interested him, he'd go, oh, well, what can I do with that? And he'd just climb all in on top. And so it was a lot of fun. It was more like kids throwing sand in a sandbox, The harder one person throws, the harder the other person throws. Where with Marcus, it was much more, this is how you do it, and this is how and they were both equally wonderful to play with, and I learned different things from both of those guys.
Chick Corea is this heavyweight.
Yeah.
You're a heavyweight in your own right. You know, were you intimidated the first time you all kind of sat down in a session to work together?
Yeah, well, this is interesting, actually, or at least to me. When I first saw him, he was like skinny chick, like spectacled professor, and hearing Return to Forever, which was Stanley Clarke and Al Di Meola and Lenny White, I could see what Al Di Meola and Stanley were doing and how it related to the banjo fingerboard. But the guy I wanted to be was the guy with the spectacles. And he was totally intimidating, just what a pure musician and the kinds of things he was playing. So then years and years later, when we started playing together, he had gained a lot of weight. So he was big chick. And so it's almost like it was a different guy that I was playing with for a number of years of playing with Chick. And so I wasn't intimidated, although I should have been. And then one day we took a break for a couple of years and got back together to do some more dates. And he had lost 100 pounds or something. And all of a sudden, the guy sitting next to me at the piano was the guy I'd seen when I was in high school. And all of a sudden, I was intimidated in a whole different way than I'd ever been around him before, because he looked like the guy that I saw when I was 17.
It brought back a lot of memories, huh? How did you step up your game to match?
You know, I always felt like I wasn't good enough, but I found a way to feel good about it, about not being good enough, which was that I realized that I provoked things out of him that I'd never heard him do before. And so I thought, well, you know, if I can't play in that league, at least I can make one of the greatest piano players I ever heard, known as one of the greatest players in history, play something he never played before. And sometimes I would do a banjo-oriented thing, which is always groups of three with the right hand, the forward rolls, and he would take that to the moon, and he would hear it and instantly respond the way a great jazz musician can, but taking that banjo information and growing it into this piano hornet's nest.
The roots of the banjo go back to Africa.
That's right.
And in 2008, the documentary Throw Down Your Heart highlights the journey that you made to Africa to discover more about this instrument that's brought you so much success. Why did you want to discover the history of the banjo?
I wanted to experience it. So it's not that I learned anything that I didn't know about the banjo, but I had a lot of incredible musical experiences in person. And sometimes I talk to people and they say, you know what pizza tastes like, but you have to eat it to experience it. You know, intellectually, you know what it is. So when I think about going to Africa or playing with musicians you could just learn it from a record.
Yeah.
And you could study it or you could take lessons from somebody. But to go to Africa and be there and breathe the air and be in someone's house and see how they think about music, that was a really incredible experience.
Give me one moment during that journey that truly stands out to you as something that you'll take with you forever.
Well, I hate to choose one because it was just like 6 weeks of one thing after another, having your mind blown over and over again. And this was with me like cherry picking things ahead of time, like, oh, I love that musician. Can we find him? Or is anybody doing this style that we can spend time with in Tanzania? But gosh, I don't know. There was this enormous marimba that it took 6 people to play.
Whoa!
That was louder than a guy wailing on a drum kit in the woods in Nakasenyi, Uganda, and I could barely hear myself playing with it, honestly. It was so loud, and I could never figure out what beat they were on. And I had this satellite phone, and at that time it was about a foot wide, a foot long. It was enormous, and I actually could make a call home. And I called Abby, and I said, "Honey, I don't know what to do. I don't know where the one is, and we're gonna be doing this thing." And she said, "You don't have to know where the one is. You could just be you. It'll be okay. You're not expected to suddenly become an African musician." And that helped me a lot, because it was like sometimes you just have to be respond to what's happening in real time as an improvising musician, and sometimes you know what's going on, and you can learn it and study it and figure out the lessons from it and incorporate them into your style. But other times, just being around music you're not familiar with will stimulate new things from you and different things from you as you try to figure out how to find your place. And that can be something cool to listen to as well.
That sounds like a lesson for life as well.
Yeah.
How did that experience impact the songs that you, therefore, from then on went on to write and perform?
It's hard to put it into, to quantify it, because I think musicians like me and a lot of my friends are kind of like bowls of gumbo, musical gumbo, unequally mixed contents that pop up in different, flavors pop out unexpectedly as you take bites in different parts of the bowl. And so I think we're all full of all of these influences for me, whether it's Chick Corea or Bach, bluegrass, Earl Scruggs. African music, I never know what's going to show up at a given moment when I'm writing something, but I don't usually try to write an African tune or a bluegrass tune or a Latin jazz tune or whatever. I usually just try to write what comes naturally and sounds like music to me, and then later on I might figure out, what part it is this and what part it is that. I don't worry about it, and in fact, I like it when it's a bit vague in my own music. I'd rather have it not be any one thing, have it be its own, self as much as possible.
A true self-expression.
Well, in other words, if someone says, oh, it's like a reggae tune with a bluegrass beat or something, then I'm like, well, yeah, it's okay, but I'd rather you didn't know what it was. I'd rather it was just itself, and it was its own thing. And maybe all those influences are in there, but they're not. It's not like, I know some people do write that way, say, well, let's go to reggae for the chorus, or let's have it be, double time jazz here, and then we'll pop into that. I'd rather if all the lines were blurry. I like that.
Let's take a quick break. When we return, we'll learn more about Béla Fleck's latest project with musicians Edmar Castaneda and Antonio Sanchez titled B Trio. Stay with us. This is Nashville.
Funding for This Is Nashville comes from Burr and Foreman Law Firm, serving clients with transactional, litigation, and regulatory needs. Discovering how each client defines a win and working with them every step of the way to achieve it. Burr.com. Funding for This Is Nashville comes from you, our listeners, and Music City Prep Clinic, Nashville-based provider for PrEP, and offering comprehensive sexual health services in an environment designed to be safe, professional, and shame-free. Learn more at musiccityprep.org.
I'm Khalil Ekulona, and this is Nashville. I'm joined by master musician Béla Fleck. Now, before the break, we talked about his journey in music, how he uses the banjo to explore new genres, and how traveling to Africa to learn more and experience the banjo's roots expanded his understanding of not only music, but life itself. Now we're going to talk about his latest project. The album is titled B Trio. It features Fleck, harpist Edmar Castaneda, and drummer Antonio Sanchez. We're going to listen to the title track, Archipelago. Béla Fleck, again, thank you so much for being here with us today.
My pleasure.
Okay, so that song has a really nice groove, and I get what you were saying earlier before the break about being able to play it forward
Yes.
and ahead of everything.
Yes.
It's got a real drive and pulse to it. What were you all invoking with this song?
Boy, I don't know. I mean, that was like the first one that popped up. Like I started to write the tune, and showed it to Edmar, and he helped me understand some of the things the harp could and couldn't do. Mm-hmm. And he has a really interesting harp setup because he's from Colombia, and he has a harp that every note can be changed by a half step with a little lever while he's playing.
Okay.
Where I think with, and maybe someone can call in and tell me I'm wrong, but I think with a conventional classical harp, you have a pedal that changes all the pitches at one time, or all of one note will go up or down a half step. with this, you can have a separate control of each. Like if you wanted to change the A, you could leave one sharp and one natural in different parts of the harp, which means you can make more complex harmony. So a lot of things that seem very natural to me harmonically were not possible. Things that were quite involved were very possible, but he had to show me what was possible. So I started writing this and then got his input on and he ended up helping me co-write it, complete it, to make it work well for the harp. So, but it's just the three of us. It's just drums, harp, and banjo. So he's playing bass lines, rhythm, incredible soloing. Mm-hmm. He's just one of these marvels as musicians. A lot of people know about Antonio Sanchez. He did the Birdman movie. It was like a all drum solo, the whole movie. It's an unbelievable soundtrack. And he played with Pat Metheny now for, 15, 17 years, something like that, as his drummer, and now he's doing different things. And he's from Mexico, and he's known as one of the great drummers of the day. But he plays with this forward lean. He understands how the music moves forward, for instance, in bluegrass, or a lot of times ethnic music. The music is, it's got this imperceptible drive to it. And you could just say it's speeding up. If it speeds up too much, it's not acceptable. And if it speeds up the right amount, it's perfect. And I think Chick Corea's music did that too. It had a little bit of a forward lean. And so with both of these guys and their Latin perspective, things lean forward, and it feels good. I can just be like, I can play the way I would play in a bluegrass band, or the way the Flecktones learned to play together with that same. I felt like I was trying to bring to them that feeling, the things that I'd learned from bluegrass, and trying to bring them into the jazz somewhat when the Flecktones started. And the other common thing with the Beat Trio and Flecktones is people would look at it on paper and say, this isn't going to work. How is a harmonica and a drum guitar and a bass and a banjo going to make music? And so they'd come like with their eyes kind of, they were curious. They didn't know what was going to happen. They'd sit there on their hands for a while. And then after a while, they'd realize they liked it. And it was always a lot of fun. There was that discovery thing. So with this thing, it's sort of like that. We've now been out playing a bit, and people are, what's this going to be? How's this going to work? And then it just starts grooving and moving forward, and people get really excited, and we're learning how to play together. It's really fun.
I do want to learn how the Beat Trio came together, but just one more comment on the song. The song to me feels like a romance, like a driving forward romance, moments where it speeds up and it gains momentum, others where it slows down and settles, as romances often do, but it's definitely a dance of two spirits moving
Absolutely.
together.
And it's funny because bluegrass music started as dance music as well. It's very connected to square dance music and to African dance and all this kind of stuff. Some of the best instrumental music makes you want to dance, but you're not supposed to. You know what I mean? Like even jazz. Jazz was dance music, and then at a certain point it got real heady, and you weren't supposed to. And in fact, trying to give jazz class meant like putting it in concert halls and having people sit and dress up nice to go hear jazz. But that's not where it started. And this music is kind of like that in that it's heady music that you can listen to. But if it doesn't make your feet want to move, then we're failing.
Look, I'm a hip hop fan, and I feel the same way. Hip hop used to make you want to dance, and now people just kind of sit and look cool in their cars.
Right. Well, I would say the classical music was the same, and we forget that as well. And that usually music goes through this. It starts out being more the music of the people, and then people keep trying to do new things with it and grow it and figure out what can I do that I haven't done, and tends to move out of the dance and into the heady. And a lot of times, to me, that's moving towards the end of that music's life, unfortunately.
Yeah, I agree with you.
That's a piece of how music tends to go.
We got to keep the people dancing.
I wish we could. Yeah, I think that would be great. It would be good. Although I love it when people listen, too.
There you go.
When we're doing our heady music that makes your feet want to move. Hopefully that makes you want to stay and be at the show. Because it's not so heady that it's just an exercise. That's the life.
Now, you all are going on a pretty big tour this year for this album,
with
right?
Beat Trio. Yeah, we do have some we'll be doing some world traveling for sure. Some of the jazz festivals that I haven't done in a long time. Yeah.
How did the Beat Trio come to be?
It came to Beat by Antonio got in touch with me. He was doing a duo album, and he wanted to see if I would play on a track. And I said, great. And he said, hey, we should go out and do some duo gigs. No one's doing anything like that. And I was scared. I was like, I don't know if I want to be the only pitched player on a whole night of music. I was like, well, I don't know. I was in that same position people are when they come see us. Like, what is this going to be? It's like, what's that going to be? I don't know how that's going to be. I said, well, what do you think about adding this cat I met, Edmar Castaneda? And he said, oh, I've met Edmar. He's really good. We've never played together. I said, well, I think that would be a really interesting band, because then he could cover the bass and we'd have some. So we said, well, let's get him to the session and do something and see what it's like. So I recorded a couple of tracks with Antonio as a duo. They went great. I was an idiot. It would have been great as a duo. It would have been a great duo thing. But I was also looking for a way to play with Edmar. And so he came in late in the session and we did some tracks that day just to sort of see what it was like. And we were all like, oh, this is actually a complete musical sound with the three of us. It's like it's a big band with just the three of us. And if we can figure out how to voice it and how to find our place, it'd be quite unique.
I'm interested in that, how you voiced it, how you found the place, how the songwriting went. I mean, you've got a harpist, a banjo player, and a drummer. What was the process of sitting in the studio and working out? Because these are mostly original pieces, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, they're all original from all three of us. Well, I mean, I remember Chick saying, when, not everything makes good duo music. You have to figure out how to make something sound complete with two instruments. And I always felt like that's what you do in every setting, is you try to figure out how to make something complete out of what you got. If you're playing solo, you got to figure out how to make it sound complete with just you. Mm-hmm. If I'm playing with Edmar, we got to figure out, where our common language is, where we can find each other, how we can support each other. We had played as a duo as well, so we were building on. I knew that worked. It was very comfortable to play with Edmar, with just the two of us. We did Big Ears a few years ago, and just a very, very highly unrehearsed set that was glorious. It went really, really well. And that's why I thought. And not only was he great and really fun to play with, the audience went crazy for him. I mean, watching him do what he does is really fun because the hands are flying, and it's a very visual experience. I had played with Antonio one other time. I had a suspicion that it was going to be great, that it would just make it really, really fun and really easy because we'd have the drums to lean on. But I'd never really seen what a great soloist Antonio is, because when I would hear him in the context of playing with Pat Metheny, he would have some spots, but in his own music and in this situation, wow, he can really blow the walls down, and it's exciting.
Let's listen to another song from the album. This song is titled 3 Is Not a Crowd. That is 3 Is Not a Crowd from Beat Trio. That's right up my mom's alley. I can tell you that. I want to switch gears a little bit.
Sure.
You've been making music professionally for the better part of 50 years. How would you like to see the music industry evolve?
Ooh, I don't feel like I have anything to do with that. It's industry. Yeah, the world is just changing so much, and people's interest in this music. Sometimes I feel like I'm the last of a dying breed, or like the last seat on the Titanic. Like classical music struggling, jazz is struggling, bluegrass is doing better than a lot of these musical forms. Mm-hmm. And it's like I tried so hard to get involved in some of these forms, but Yeah, I mean, social media is just destroying people's interest in sitting and listening to music. There's the hardcore folks that are always going to love it, but more and more, you just got to do it because you want to. You know, for me, it's I don't want to change tracks at this point.
Yeah.
You know, I'm still trying to learn and get better and figure out what I can do well now. You know, at this point, and I'm more well known now. I have more opportunities to do certain things, and I want to take advantage of those. But yeah, I'm not giving you a very good answer here.
No, that you're right in line with what I'm thinking, because you know I'm looking at social media technology. Platforms like Spotify and music, they have changed how we consume music.
Yeah.
I think what's gone is like the intimacy of opening a CD, a cassette tape, or a vinyl record, sitting down and listening to it. People use the term now, intentionally listening. But yeah, look, if my intent is to listen to music, of course I'm intentionally doing something. I don't want to get into semantics here, but you know, now things seem to be made on this on-the-go lifestyle of the modern world. What can we gain from just sitting back and putting on an album and listening to it and doing nothing else? For
me, it's like it started with the video age, you know, and when instead of having our own thoughts about what music was, we started MTV, VH1. We're watching someone's stylized idea of what the song is supposed to be, and then you can't get that image out of your head. Where in the old days, when you would put on some music and listen to it and just close your eyes or just sit there in front of the speakers as if it was a television screen, you'd position yourself perfectly and get excited about music. You had your own ideas about what that music was, even music with lyrics, but in particular, instrumental music. You could get lost in your own whole mental images about it. So, and I think that's a real loss, because nowadays it seems like it's very rare that you find people that will go, you know, put on music, sit and listen to it, and not be watching something with it. I mean, they even have these videos that you know, create designs to when you what are those called?
The little screensaver. I remember iTunes, old school iTunes used to have that.
Yeah, but now that's a thing. It's a certain kind of video, they call it. But it's just like you can't listen to something without seeing something, without activating both parts of different parts of your brain. But there's a different experience you have. Both when you hear live music, there's the shared experience that you lose when you don't hear music in a group of people. Like going to a movie with a bunch of people and everyone applauding for a scene. You don't do that when you're home watching it on your iPad or on an airplane or whatever.
That's true.
You have a different experience. And then when you see that other people are having the same feeling that you are, that's a commonality. That makes you all feel like you're together. That's a great thing about live music.
We're going to take one more break. When we come back, we'll talk with Béla Fleck about what being a dad is like and how he wants his children to relate with music. Stay with us. This is Nashville.
Funding for This Is Nashville comes from Nobody Trashes Tennessee, the state of Tennessee's official litter prevention campaign, managed by TDOT. Details on how to be part of the solution to end littering at nobodytrashestennessee.com.
I'm Khalil Ekulona, and this is Nashville. This hour, I've been sitting with 17-time Grammy-winning musician Béla Fleck. Béla, again, thanks for being here.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Now, you are married to accomplished musician and banjo player Abigail Washburn, as you mentioned. You have a couple young kids. We were talking earlier about listening to music, having those special moments at home. Do you all do that as a family, have special listening moments?
We try. There's resistance in the modern age from children. They have things that they like to do.
Okay.
They would like to play Legos. They would like to listen to stories being told on audiobooks. They would like to watch Bluey. They would like to, the screen is, as much as we fight it, the screen is pulling at them. And we do go to a great school, the Linden Waldorf School, and there's a real emphasis on staying away from social media as much as possible. We do all we can. But, you have a long flight coming up, and a way to get the kids to look forward to that flight. One way is to make that a time that they're allowed to watch things, But they both grew up coming to a lot of shows, seeing mom and dad play, and being at festivals. And Juno, who's now 11, is learning to play the fiddle, and he loves going to the bluegrass festivals and going and to the bluegrass camps. And he's starting to play the fiddle, and he sings really well, and it's exciting. Theodore he is maybe one of the most interesting musicians I've ever heard. I find it so much more interesting listening to him play than almost any professional musician I know. He likes to sit down at the piano. He used to put a brick on the hold pedal, and he would go into a space and play piano for 40 minutes nonstop and just paint and do this beautiful stuff, harmonically free, rhythmically free, just beautiful. And anytime you would say, hey, what are you doing? He'd say, stop listening to me. This is for me. It was like it was for him.
Yeah.
Very personal. He also is incredible on the drums. And in fact, if anybody, he sounded kind of like John Bonham, like from the minute he sat down at the drums. No one has ever told him how to play drums. He's never had seen a drummer, but he sat down and he started playing the kick on the one and the snare on the offbeat and playing with a lot of passion, and he would just get lost in drums. But anytime you try to record him or film him, he makes you stop because it's for him.
It's for him.
Juno likes the applause. He likes to practice and do a performance with us or whatever, and get applauded. And he's taking lessons from a great fiddle player here in town. So it's great. It's great. But they're surrounded by this. I mean, like from, when Juno was 2, he was sitting on Chick Corea's lap and they were playing piano together, or with Zakir sitting him at the tablas. Theodore, they take it for granted. But maybe one day they'll realize how fortunate they are to have this stuff going on in their lives.
Sometimes, but it can be hard for parents, for the children of parents who are very accomplished, like you and your wife. And
right.
If the kids want to take up music as a career, there'll be expectations like, hey, we know who your parents are.
Right.
You better be amazing.
That's hard on them. Yeah, and that's not fair.
Yeah.
That's not fair. Yeah. But it's also a quandary. Do we push it? Do we, like I know people that say, I'm so glad my mom made me take piano lessons. I hated it at the time, but now I can play the piano. And I've had other people say, my mom made me play piano when I was a kid, and now I never want to play it because they pushed it down my throat. And so it's a funny line you're trying to walk of like letting them do their own thing, and yet having them get the benefit of who their parents are and what world. Like there's a beautiful family in the bluegrass world, musical family there that they can be a part of, and that they should be a part of, that they have access to a lot of people wouldn't have access to, and make their life very special and make it rich. And I want them to have that.
How did you and Abigail meet?
We met at a square dance here in Nashville. It's the only square dance I've ever gone to in Nashville. And my friend Russ Barenberg got in touch with me and asked me if I wanted to come play because he knew I used to go to square dances up in Boston right when I got out of high school and started playing in a band up there. And there was a fiddle player in town that he thought I might enjoy to come into town for the dance. And I was playing, and I saw this girl on the dance floor. And Abby, when she dances, she lights up. She doesn't just light up herself, but she lights up the whole room. And so I was like, wow, that person's lighting up the whole room. I wonder who that is. It took a number of years before we ended up together, but I always remembered that.
I was interested in that. Like, how did you win it over? I mean, being Béla Fleck doesn't hurt, but you got to be more than a master banjo player, right?
Yeah. In fact, she had seen the Flecktones play, and she was not very impressed.
Okay.
Yes. In fact, she said, this is not what I like about music. I like Doc Watson. I like Hazel Dickens. I like this earthy, old-time bluegrass and old-time music, and this modern thing. That's not really why she had come to a bluegrass festival and seen it and was not into it. So I had to win her over. My first move was to attempt to play clawhammer banjo, which probably made her feel very, very good because I was so bad at it. But I made an effort, and I was really interested. It's a great style. People tend to be good at 3-finger or clawhammer. They're two different ways of playing the banjo.
What's the difference?
So clawhammers is more related to the original African approach to banjo. You don't use any finger picks. You hit down with your index and middle finger, and you pluck with your thumb. With 3-finger, you pluck up with your fingers, and you wear 3-finger picks. So it's more of a strumming, rhythmic, trancey kind of thing, generally, although people do all kinds of great things with it, and she does. She does do her own thing with it, but it's a very earthy rooted style where bluegrass and 3-finger has started to encompass jazz and all kinds of other music as well.
You won her over.
I was lucky. And as incredible a person as she is, and as a great a musician she is, what a great mother. She's on the school board now, and she's the only thing about that is her music is so good. She needs to be making her music. with or without me. She needs to be making her music because it's very special.
You one son who's 11, the other one who's 6. Are you both prepared? Particularly you. Are you both prepared for the moment where they decide that you are not cool?
I think it's just right around the corner. It might have already arrived.
How do you plan to deal with that when that happens?
I guess I'll just have to deal with it, won't I? I mean, I don't assume that they think I'm cool in the first place, but they're into what they're into already. They've already found their community, their kids that the things they're into, And then also there's this thing where Abby and I take turns leaving town to go do things. Like I was just out for 8 or 10 days, and then I'm away. Now I'm Papa on the spot, and then she's out.
Yeah.
So those times when it's just me and them, we really can bond. All of a sudden, we get a lot closer. And I think that's true for Abby too. When I'm away, their bond strengthens, and then there's the bond when we're all together, all 4 of us, which is equally maybe the most important.
That's beautiful. One final question for you.
Mm-hmm. Yes, the answer is yes.
Okay, awesome. We're done, everybody.
Right.
But in this world of high expectations, sometimes those expectations, many times those expectations are self-imposed. We've got to become great. We've got to become excellent in this world of exceptional people, particularly in this country and our society. What would you say to the artist, musician, or creative person who's kind of finding it hard to handle the expectations of becoming great?
Well, I was thinking about something else when you started saying that, which is that sometimes like putting a ton of pressure on yourself doesn't actually get you there, and sometimes it does.
Okay.
So like there's times when that practice, that intense, like I'm gonna get great by like busting my ass for the next 6 years in a room by myself is going to get you there. And then there's times when playing music with people or living life. I mean, Victor Wooten was always one that said, I learn as much from the day-to-day life about music as I do from studying music. Sometimes you learn as much on the bandstand or in daily interaction with people as you can, like forcing things to happen. And I've definitely been one who's forced things to happen at various times in my life by busting my ass to learn how to do certain things and putting myself in vices over and over again into difficult situations that now I have to do, committing myself to things that now I have to do. So I don't know if that's the healthiest way to do it. I mean, I've gotten some results, but I don't know if that's the healthiest way. I think maybe the end point, like what are you trying to pull off here? Do you want to be a well-rounded artist that expresses themselves through their art? Because that would be winning.
Yeah.
That's so. What's the goal? Again, that's the key thing you got to think about. What do you really want to achieve? The other thing is, if you make yourself too difficult a situation that you have to pull off every day, then your life's going to be very difficult. So, I mean, some people play, at I'm not sure how to put this exactly, but suppose you have 100% of ability, and if you play at 60, you're always within a comfort zone. Other people will try to play at 100 or 105, which means they're constantly screwing up because they're hitting the walls of their ability constantly. And so if you want to have like a flow, like there's Kenny Werner wrote this book called about musicianship that talks about finding that flow state, and that's not about putting yourself up against your walls constantly. So it just depends what your music is trying to achieve.
I want to thank you so much.
My pleasure.
For being here. Béla Fleck is a 17-time Grammy winner. He's a master musician, and his project, B Trio, along with Edmar Castaneda and drummer Antonio Sanchez, is out now. Again, Béla, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Are the Flecktones getting back together?
I've got good news for your mother.
Okay.
We are going to be getting together at the end of this year for the first time in a long time, and we're going to do a Christmas tour, and it's going to be a tour with both Howard Levy, the original 4th member who plays keyboards and harmonica, and Jeff Coffin, who plays saxophone, who's been with the Dave Matthews Band for the last 17 years, and a pile of Tuvan throat singers. And we will be traveling, and we will be in Nashville around Christmas.
Awesome. We're going to make sure all of you are there to listen. Okay, we're going to go out with the song Kaleidoscopes by the B Trio. Thanks to you for tuning in this hour. This is Nashville is a production of Nashville Public Radio. Today's episode was produced by yours truly. It was directed by Tasha A.F. Lemley. Our board operators, Liv Lombardi. The masterminds behind our theme music are LaRange and Namir Blade. You can listen back at thisisnashville.org or wherever you get good podcasts. And the conversation does not end here. Comment and tell us what you want to hear on the show by leaving us a message, 615-751-2500. Find us on the socials, Blue Sky, Instagram, and X at This Is Nashville. This is Nashville. I'm Khalil Ekulona. We'll see you tomorrow, everybody. And be good to each other.